This content is brought to you by Kim Westland Incorporated, helping you create a vision for your life. Hello, I'm your host, Kim Westland, and thank you for joining Create Your Vision podcast. My guest today has an incredible story that is full of twists and turns, heartbreak, achievement, and probably everything in between. And I knew when I met her that I wanted to help share her story and talk about what it takes to move forward despite life-altering circumstances. Vahen King is an author, speaker, international fashion model, first ever Miss Wheelchair Canada, Miss Kindness World, and founder of the nonprofit organization called Going Farther. And it challenges men and women of all ages to see past their self-perceived limits and go farther. I love that you said self-perceived, Vahen, and just welcome to you. So glad to have you here. And even your intro is inspiring.
Oh, it's so good to be here, Kim. I'm so excited about this conversation today.
Yeah, I am too. Well, we're gonna talk about insights around your journey and really how you've navigated an extremely difficult and unexpected health challenge that left you in a wheelchair. And since then, you've been paving the way for others with a message of hope. And you have this global vision that I just love to hear about to share your message with the world. And I just want to quote you here. I found this on your website. My biggest achievement is seeing how my courage is helping people of all abilities overcome their fears and go farther. I think that really sums it up so nicely. So thank you again for being here. Is there anything that you'd like to add to what I just said about you?
Actually, it's funny that you asked that, because when you're reading that, it sounds so fancy, hey, like a quote by whatever. But the basics of that is because I everybody carries this inner voice, like, oh, you can't do that and you can't do this and whatever. And so I feel like if I could do it, anybody could. Right? Like, because when you're struggling, your struggle is so real. Sometimes you actually feel alone. So I'm like, wow, if I, somebody who didn't think that you could, went ahead and was able to turn all that pain into something. I'm like, wow, basically it's like, if I could do it, anybody could do it. And that's in simplest form. That's how I
absolutely
like so.
And it's so interesting when we hear our own intros. I find when somebody's introduced me, it's like, that's me? Wow, that's cool.
But it's good. Thanks.
Okay, Vahen. Well, I would love it if you would take us back to when you were 23 years old and a week after you got engaged. And I'm assuming at that age, my daughter's 23. She's kind of got the whole road out in front of her. And I'm assuming you were on top of the world, just kind of envisioning your whole life ahead of you. What happened at that age?
So I had just gotten engaged. My husband and I, we were so excited. And actually, I remember the day I was getting ready to actually go out and meet with some friends and family to show off my engagement ring, kind of do the official announcement, if you will. And I started experiencing like some excruciating pain in my upper body and down my arms. And I was like, what's going on? Like I got something that I really want to do today. So there's no time for this kind of thing, right? So, but it didn't go away. And I actually got my mom on the phone and told her what was happening. She actually thought that my symptoms and the way that I was describing them, she thought I was having a heart attack or whatever. Anyway, somebody called the ambulance between me being on the phone and the landlords that I was with. They heard me in pain and screaming, really, because I was in so much pain, but I didn't actually realize until later all these things that I'm telling you now actually happened because some things you block out. But I ended up getting to the hospital. I remember being in the hospital. They had me on like a bed in the hallway, and I was hooked up to morphine for the pain. It was just so severe. And I remember sitting there or laying there wanting to turn to get comfortable. I started doing this, like carrying my hand, like just like that was weird. I didn't really think anything of it until I had to do it with my leg as well. And then I realized, wait a minute, like I'm not able to move my limbs now without moving them without moving them. And I said to the nurse, I'm like, nurse, I can't feel my legs. And immediately she wheeled me into the emergency room. And every 15 minutes, they were checking my vitals. And my vitals and my reflexes were getting less and less. Like they actually thought they were going to lose me. And
Wow.
so within a half a day, I was paralyzed from the chest down. They had life support there, but I didn't need life support, thankfully. But I did need a feeding tube. So that day started out with me thinking I was going to go and celebrate with my fiance, to literally fighting for my life at the end of the day. Didn't even know if I was going to survive. And here I am, just laying in the hospital bed. The doctors are not giving me a very good diagnosis. After a week of tests, they said, Vahen, you have transverse myelitis, and we're going to send you to long-term care. We're going to need, like, you're not going to be independent, so you're going to need long-term care. And this was devastating. Like two things were happening simultaneously there. My parents and my family doctor, they were all like talking to the specialist, and my family doctor said in the meeting, because they were going to send me to long-term care, they were like, what would you do if this was your daughter? She's 23 years old. And Kim, you had mentioned that you have a daughter that's 23 years old. If they're saying,
Yeah.
she's never going to walk again, but we're going to send her to the nearest rehab, like the nearest place to like be fed and clothed for the rest of her life. Like, that wasn't an acceptable answer. So my family doctor was like, okay, what would you do if it was your daughter? Would you give her an opportunity? Would you give her a chance, right, at rehabilitation or whatever? Like, she's so young. Long story short there, they did give me an opportunity to pursue therapy, but the specialist said, well, she's still on a feeding tube. She can't sit up without fainting. The things that I was needing to be able to go to rehab, I didn't have yet. But he said, if this, and if this, she can go. Well, within a week, feeding tube came out, a spot actually opened up at the end of the month, and I was sitting up without passing out. Like, those are the 3 criteria, right? And I had to be able to sit up for long periods of time. And I think I had to dress myself. I think I had to learn how to dress myself. And all of those things started happening. And so I go to rehab, and so that was the beginning of the journey.
You tell this story, and I don't know if I've ever heard such a like going from your engagement, celebrating, to this, like within a day.
Yeah.
That is such a transformation
Yeah.
that was so not expected. And it just boggles my mind to think about what was going on for you, your family, everybody that was a part of this.
It was devastating.
Devastating would be the word. I can't even imagine. What was that moment like when you were laying there and you knew? I mean, I assumed you probably carry on with the story and tell us what happened when, in terms of kind of getting past the initial shock of this, but how were you when you knew you had to make a decision on how to move forward, and you had like, what kind of emotions were you going through? I'm kind of stumbling over my words here because I'm thinking, how do you get past this initial shock?
So many layers to that. I will say, for the people that are like wondering about this man that proposed to me that day, I will tell you, first of all, that obviously I was like, this is new information. Like, this is a game changer. Will he still want me? So in the midst of tests and being diagnosed, I was still like, man, do I still have a fiance? Even though he came and visited me every day, I still knew I needed to say, listen, but this is a game changer. We haven't really told anyone. So do you want to take the ring back? And he said, you know what? No. He's like, now there's a little backstory of the things and the people that he spoke to working these things out. Some people said, you have every right to walk away. This is a game changer and no one would fault you for walking away. He had that. And then he had like other people in her family saying, like, do you love her? And is, not asking questions to actually get to like, you know what? I do love her. And God gave her to me. That's no question. So I'm not going to walk away now.
Mm.
And
And that's a legit question.
that is
I think that anybody would ask themselves, and it's a test of how you truly feel about somebody and the decision to go forward. Yeah.
Yes. And then to jump ahead to the question you asked, what was that moment? How did you start to move forward? How did you all the things? I think at the very beginning, if we're try to get somewhere, because there's so many layers. But first was like, we didn't think it was going to last, really, because we're faith believing people who believe that this is maybe just a thing that's going to go away. I have to work on Monday. This is a weekend kind of thing, and like we believe that we're going to be okay and we're going to get through this. And while we have, and we did, the journey was a lot harder and much more difficult than we could ever anticipate. But the denial phase of like, no, God's got this, and we're gonna get through this. Um, but the just being able just to take one day at a time. But initially, okay, so we got married, and I was like, wow, he stayed. Like that was huge, right?
Yeah.
What I found out, what I realized, is that he stayed, but I knew he loved me. I didn't love the new me. I didn't love
That's a whole other battle, isn't it?
man. And I know that I'm not only speaking just to people like, okay, maybe you've got a disability, maybe you don't. But that battle of like when life happens, when things come, to understand what it means to love yourself when things come that you're not expecting. Because I was like, I'm now a person with a disability. Like I have stigmas about people with disability I didn't even realize, and all those stigmas came on myself, which caused me to have more self-doubt, insecurities, even more than I was. And so that became really real. And so that journey lasted for years of the self-doubt. I hated people seeing me in the wheelchair, Kim. It was so much so when we would go out for dinner, like my husband would come visit me in the hospital, we'd go out for a few hours at a time. But when we go into a restaurant, I would have him carry me in because I wouldn't want to be seen in the chair. We'd get people like nudging their spouses. It's like, oh, this is so romantic. Why won't you do that for me? Those kind of things, right? Because I would rather people be jealous of me in that way, thinking how romantic, than for people to see the chair and be all embarrassed and like, I just hated people. I hated that people would look at me like a victim. So that is just a very short version of the what I've went through. How did I come through that? How was I able to overcome? I had to I reached this point where I would come home, I try to survive, right? Keep going, just keep getting up the daily routine. At one point, when it got to the very worst of my journey, was when I was kind of done pretending that things were okay. I would come home and I would cry myself to sleep. I would crawl in bed, cry myself to sleep. I was like, man, this is no way to live. This is no way to live, right? And so I really started looking at myself, and first of all, I started seeing other people doing things with a lot less mobility than me, and doing a lot more.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I was at a spot where I'm like, I'm not driving until I can drive with my feet. Well, I'd still not be driving because I drive with hand controls now. And so a lot of that process is finding another way to do things. Because if I didn't find another way to do things, I'm always going to be stuck behind a struggle. So that was one thing.
And you said one thing that was really important there, one word, process. I'm hearing you talk through the process that it took you from the day that this became a reality in your life to working through step by step by step and going through all of those emotions and circumstances and all of those things. And process is a huge word. It's a huge word to understand in this situation.
It is.
Yeah.
And in my second book, I actually wanted to include the process of grief, like the 7 stages of grief, because I wanted people to understand that it is a process and it's not a straight line. You think you conquer one fear and it just keeps coming back around, and you have to keep trying to move forward. For me, another key was, okay, I had to learn to love myself. I had to learn to let Vaughn love me where I was at. I didn't feel good, but I had to believe that he still like was able to be in my pain. So that means I had to tell him how I was really feeling and struggling, and the
Mhm.
things that I struggled with. Because now, as a person with a disability, we could talk a whole other hour about the things that you struggle as a person with a disability that revolves around bowel and bladder. And if you are too embarrassed to talk about those things, which I was, too
Yep.
embarrassed to talk about how much I was really struggling emotionally, physically, and all the things that came with this, struggling and embarrassed about the fact that um, my sex life, and the things that I can't feel. Like when I first was died, when I first happened to me, like,
Mhm.
listen, anybody, like, we were really engaged, like fireworks, man. We were like fireworks and sparks. And when I first kissed him after this happened, Kim, I felt nothing. I felt nothing. And it was devastating.
I can imagine that. Like to feel to be in that position of experiencing things one way and then moving to another and that being a part of it. It's nothing you would have even dreamt you would have
No.
had to overcome,
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Oh, it was,
Yeah.
and I kept that to myself, and if there's a please, if anybody's watching and want to know more of this story, like reach out to me. I'll give you an ebook or whatever. But there's so many layers. And just as a side note, when we're internalizing pain and we're not allowing someone in that pain, and we think we're alone, we're pushing it down. I think there's only one way that it's going to come out, and it's toxic, and it's going to be self-defeating. You're going to like hurt people. That's the best
Absolutely
way
they
to
do.
describe it. And I was hurting myself and I was hurting others, and I literally almost destroyed my marriage because of it, and that's a whole other journey. But allowing somebody into our pain, so the process, and allowing just that process, and be gracious to yourself.
Well, and you said too, like I'm hearing you talk and I'm hearing the struggle and obviously there's a physical struggle there. You've now got a new physical
Yeah.
reality. But the emotional and mental piece of this is the other part. And what would you say was the biggest limitation to overcome for you? Was it physical or was it everything else?
I think it was the internal struggle. Yes, there were physical struggles. There
Interesting.
were physical struggles. I think if I was gonna say what my biggest physical battle was all the things that revolve around my bathroom, and the things that I now like. I can't go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't, pee. I couldn't do all those things on my own without like and it was more than just needing assistance. It was literally causing me great distress. Like that's a very clean and mild way to put it. Well, I will actually.
Yeah.
My bathroom routine was either, if I was in and out of the bathroom for 2 hours, that was a good day, and I'm not even kidding you. That was a good day. It could last to 5 to 8 hours. Like, and I'm not even stretching. My
Oh.
bathroom routine, I swear, caused me to have what has split personality, because my husband was so kind. He was so good. He'd always check in on me. That there was points where he was like trying to figure out how to put a TV on the wall and all these things to try to help me adapt, because I was spending
Oh,
so much time in there, whether I was going or I was not going, or it was just a nightmare. And he would say,
yeah.
when I come out, he's like, "Oh, Dr. Gentle or Mr. Hyde," like, and he was always trying to find ways to like make it light. But anyway, I just wanted to give you a glimpse in that window, because and then as an FYI, my first book was written in that, because I'm like, when I started to really turn that captive prison into something productive, and that's literally what I turned it into. But back to the process and how I was like, my faith journey. I mentioned it at the beginning, and I have to do the hard work. You have to choose to like do things differently. You have to choose that
Mhm.
resiliency and that determination. You need that, and there are practical things that you do, like doing the next right thing. Like, you get up in the morning and okay, you got to eat or you got to shower, whatever the next right thing is to keep going, and to keep you mentally sane. But for me, my faith and having something bigger than me to look to to give me strength that I didn't. And it was in my pain, I went away from my faith, like through that process. Because
Mm-hmm.
it was after I graduated Bible college, and I went through this phase where like I didn't understand God, and then when I got sick, I was just like, I didn't really understand why this was happening to me. Like I devoted my life.
You'd have a lot of
I had a lot of
questions, right?
questions, but
Yeah.
ironically enough, it actually helped me dig out what was true about God and what wasn't. And it wasn't that I was it wasn't that I was a bad person and this was happening to me like I was led to believe by people in my circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we could go down that. It could be another podcast if you wanted to do another one. Uh,
Yes.
but it was having something bigger than yourself to rely on for strength. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, even today, I still struggle with the fears and the doubts and insecurities. But, girl, like, I have a better resiliency. I had more of a determination, and I'm grounded. That's the problem with me before. I wasn't grounded in who I was, and having something bigger than me to hang on to when like life is falling apart. Like, you need to be grounded. And so I would say that now I feel more grounded than I ever did, and thankfully, because mass, we in the storms.
Yes. Well, and I just had a conversation not long ago where I talked about what's your anchor, and we all have to determine what that
Oh,
is. And that's exactly what I'm hearing you talk about right now is you have to figure out what are you anchored to? How do you pull on strength and where do you get that from? For you, it's your faith. And everybody needs to determine what that is for themselves and where that's going to come from. Because when these storms hit, and they'll hit all of us in different ways. Yours was incredible, a physical challenge, and we're all going to have those times, but what is it that you grab hold of when the unthinkable comes
yeah.
across?
Um,
Yeah.
yes, obviously, my faith is very important. It does keep you grounded. But another key thing is having a community of people. Like my husband was
Mm.
another anchor. Having family.
He sounds
Oh,
incredible.
he is. He is. He truly is. And I have amazing support system with my family. And being grounded in that way. I also like to
Mhm.
say though that good people and good supports are great. But if I could use the analogy that they're there, like, how there's a good way to use a credit card and there's a bad way to use a credit card? Good
Yep.
friends and knowing how to access them is like understanding good use of credit card.
I've never heard it put like that, but that's awesome.
You're not
Thank you. That's
taking from
great.
something depleted. And for me, I've
Yes.
understood that because a lot of times when we struggle, and this is even today that I keep reminding myself, I think I have a chapter in my second book about what's your muster point. Where is it that you run to? Who is it you try to hang on to? What mindset or what thing that you're running to that's not filling the void or not giving you what you need? Like, I think in COVID, that kind of exaggerated everything. And the things
Yes.
that people were running to for comfort or support, when they realize that's not there, you need to know that what you run to for comfort and support is not going to leave you high and dry.
It's a big wake up call,
Yeah.
isn't it? When you're in that moment and you realize, who do I
Mhm.
have? It's sometimes the shake up we
Yeah.
need to figure out how we need to
Yeah, and
readjust some
it's
things.
internal, right? You need to
Absolutely.
know where to find it internally.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and to
Yeah.
qualify that also, like sometimes there needs to be medication and counseling, and all those things are valid, but we still need to know how to get those supports. And it can't be solely dependent
Yes.
on something out there. There's somebody that needs to come from in here and know how to find that grounding. I love that. Yeah.